Happy March! This month, I'm really looking forward to focusing on some of the big questions and gray areas of substance use, particularly drinking. I'll talk about high functioning, rock bottom, mommy wine culture, and jokes about drinking. And the big question, do I have a problem? So if this interests you, please hit subscribe, like this video, and stick around. Hello and welcome. My name is Jennifer. I'm a mother of 4 in recovery from alcohol addiction, and I've learned a few things along the way. This video is simply for the purpose of sharing information. I'm not a doctor or an expert. Most importantly, I'm not here to lecture you or to try and tell you whether you do or do not have a problem with drinking. But I can tell you what I've learned, both about addiction and about myself. And maybe something that's been helpful for me will be helpful for you too. So this big question, do I have a problem, is first of all an extremely common question, often accompanied with thoughts about, I don't drink every day, I don't black out, I don't hide bottles, I still function. Or in my case, I didn't drink during pregnancy. What we're really doing here is comparing. I'm not that bad. So what I want to talk about is a different way to approach that question. And again, this is not to diagnose or label, but if we can come from a place of curiosity, the question may change from, is it severe enough, to, is this working for me? Why do we look for dramatic signs? Culturally, we have been taught to look for extremes. Rock bottom, losing your job, homelessness, legal trouble, daily drinking, but addiction science has evolved a lot over the years. We know now that substance use exists on a spectrum, if you want to know a bit more about that. Most people don't just wake up one day clearly addicted. It's usually gradual, often quite subtle, and reinforced over time. And that makes it harder to see. So if the only metric is catastrophe, a lot of people will miss the quieter signs. Back to shifting the question. Instead of asking, do I qualify as having a problem? It can be more helpful to ask things like, do I rely on alcohol to change how I feel? Does it feel disproportionately rewarding? Is it hard to skip? Do I negotiate with myself about it? And do I look forward to it more than I'd like to admit? These are obviously questions we ask ourselves in private, but even admitting the real answers to ourselves can be scary. Neuroscientists talk about addiction as a process of deep learning in the brain, patterns that we rehearse until they become automatic. And that means something important. We don't need chaos for this learning to be happening. If every stressful day ends with alcohol, the brain is learning stress, drink, relief. And that pattern can strengthen quietly, even in someone who appears completely functional. This leads me to the concept of using alcohol to unwind. I'll talk about this more in depth in the next video, but for now, just know that it is extremely common. At the end of a long workday, or when the kids are finally in bed, a stressful period of time has passed, we've finished an important job. Now it's my time. And alcohol works. It slows the nervous system, turns down the volume on all the mental noise, and softens the landing after a hard day. But habit loop research describes what is also happening. The brain begins to associate that feeling of relief with the behavior, not with the actual source of the regulation. So over time, the drink isn't just a drink. It becomes the only way to shift your state. When something becomes your primary stress regulator, even if it's socially accepted, it can quietly become a dependency. Nothing dramatic, just patterned. A lot of people will tell themselves, but I'm still functioning. And that may be true, but functioning is not the same thing as thriving. So in this area, questions that can be helpful are, how is my sleep? Is my anxiety higher than it used to be? Am I more irritable? Do I feel fully present? Is this supporting the life that I want long term? And what's important here is these aren't moral questions. They're questions of alignment. In fact, the more you can remove morality from the entire conversation, the easier it's going to be to answer any of these questions and to reach out if you need to. So this is where I'll address the label of alcoholic. I think it's really scary to contemplate the idea that we'll have to call ourselves an alcoholic if we have a problem with drinking. So I just want to be clear, you don't need a label, and you don't need to hit a rock bottom in order to change your relationship with something. You don't need a diagnosis. You don't need permission. If something feels off and you're questioning it, that curiosity is enough. You're allowed to experiment or pause or reassess. The goal of this curiosity and in asking the questions isn't to prove that you have a problem. The goal is to be building a life that feels clear, steady, and aligned with whatever your values are. And sometimes that just starts with a very simple question. Is this really working for me? Someone like me, I'm not afraid to say I have a problem with alcohol. And I did have to hit some of those dramatic markers. If I had known in those early years that it could be so subtle and that alcohol really wasn't working for me as much as it felt like it was in the moments that I thought I needed it, maybe I would have found my way to some kind of help earlier on. But that's in the what ifs, and that's not where it went. But anyway, this applies to essentially everything in our lives. You know, we can take a moment to assess anything and ask, is this working for me? Is this taking me where I want to go long term? And some things will be easier to answer than others. So just to summarize, our relationship to alcohol operates on a spectrum. It's a learning behavior, and we can assess it as it is without having to put labels on it or have any kind of dramatic signals that it's time for a change. Also, you don't have to decide everything today. If this has made you in any way curious, that's a really great place to start. If you are feeling like you need outside help, I'll put in the link in my bio for people who are local in British Columbia. If you live outside of British Columbia, please message me and I will happily help you look up and source whatever it may be that you're looking for. There are lots of different things out there, and there are lots of holes in the system, and sometimes it's just hard to find things. If you found this in any way helpful or interesting, please subscribe and come back for more of these kind of gray area videos over the month of March. If you have specific questions, please ask them. I would be happy to either look up the answer or answer from what I already know. Yeah, I hope you'll come back and have a great week. I'll see you soon.